Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm interviewing my very good friend Steph, who is an expert in how to do freelancing, getting jobs on Upwork and Facebook and LinkedIn and all these different things. And I'm sure in this current time, you guys are possibly thinking about doing some freelancing. And so my idea was to get Steph on and do kind of an emergency episode of how you can really quickly become a freelancer. So welcome, Steph. Thanks for coming on to my little podcast video.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So tell me what you do and why you're an expert in freelancing.
So I've been freelancing for about 5 or 6 years, I think now. And I got my start like completely from scratch. I wasn't even experienced with what I was doing. And so I started by learning web design, and now I do web design and branding as well. And I run a couple other e-commerce companies too. So it's a big mix of things.
Nice, cool. And you've got a course at the moment, like an email course about how to start in freelancing?
Yes. So I was just trying to think of ways to help with the situation because it is, dicey times and everything is pretty crazy. And I've had some friends personally lose their jobs and are starting to ask like, well, how can I work online? And just got me thinking like freelancing was how I got started. And I got started pretty easily without a ton of experience. And I think, in terms of online business, it's probably one of the easiest things that you can just quickly dive into. Like there's lots of other things that you can do to build a business. But as far as just quickly making money, freelancing is definitely pretty low barrier to entry. So I just decided to make like a quick email mini course. So I just put together like from start to finish how you can get started freelancing, specifically using the freelance platform Upwork.
The thing that I think is really cool about freelancing is if you want this to be your forever job now, then you can get started straight away and start building your portfolio and start acquiring clients. But it's also something that you could use just to like plug the gap. If you just need some money this month or for the next couple of months and you just do a couple of short projects and then you go back to your normal job. So it feels like it's a good flexible option. It's not like you have to start a whole big business with a big long-term plan.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely the benefit of it, is that you can just use it for whatever you want. I'll hop on Upwork and get a couple jobs pretty quick.
And how's Upwork looking at the moment? Are there lots of opportunities? Is it really drying up? Like, how are they handling it?
It's been really interesting. I kind of thought that there would be less opportunity, but I've actually seen a lot, because a lot of businesses, especially restaurants or businesses that rely on foot traffic, they're now like quickly trying to pivot. I need to, sell everything on my website. Oh, I need someone to help me market my website. I need social media, or I need, they got to finish their website. But then also a lot of like really easy, low barrier to entry jobs like customer service. I've seen a bunch of posts for companies that are, do home delivery of some sort already, and now they need more customer service help. So there's a wide spread, I would say, of opportunity and definitely stuff that's pretty quick for people to just dive into if they need something simple.
Amazing. That's such good news. Okay, cool. So the plan today is to do your like 7-stage process, or kind of 7 top tips. So hit me with number 1.
Yeah, so I'll just walk you guys through. I mean, this is what I have in the mini course, but I'll just give you sort of the overview. So you already have an idea of what you would dive into if you were to just sign up for the email course. So number 1 is really talking about what you want to freelance in and the overall mindset. If you've already worked for a company doing something online or some sort of digital skill, then it doesn't quite apply to you. But this is more for people that, all of a sudden are like, oh, like I don't have my barista job or whatever it was that you were doing before. This is to help you figure out what might be a good fit. I think there's a lot of really easy, like quick to transition over things like, working in a retail job to doing customer service online is a pretty good transition. But I also go over, how you can go through Upwork to see what types of like opportunities are available, to see if that's something you might be interested in.
You're right. If you already work in social media, then you're just going to probably create a profile for social media. But like if you're a barista, then it might not occur to you that you could do customer service. And so then when you go onto Upwork, you're like, oh yeah, I'm great at customer service. I literally do that all day. You just don't think of it as something that's part of your job description. So yeah, I suppose there's kind of that process of like brainstorming your own ideas and skills and what you think you might have from your current career or your previous careers or things you want to get into, and like asking your friends what you're good at. And then there's also that second phase of going onto Upwork and seeing things that you didn't think you could do, but you're like, oh yeah, customer service is a job. I could do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely encourage people to just think about things they're interested in. I mean, like that's how I got started with graphic design. I didn't really know what I was doing at the start, but I slowly learned the fundamentals of the skill and then quickly was able to make money just off of the basics and then sort of scaled it from there.
And so what if someone, maybe they feel that they just genuinely have no skills that they can do, but they would like to do graphic design? How do you suggest they get started? Can you just take on a job and just offer a really cheap price and be like, I'm going to learn on this job? Or should you do an online course first? Or what kind of steps would you say for someone who really feels like they have nothing that they could do on Upwork right now?
What I would recommend if you want to jump into something specific, but you don't have those skills yet, is to take some sort of course first to get at least the fundamentals of what you want to learn down a bit, because you don't want to jump into something completely blind. But if you have the basics, and I think for a lot of things, you can learn the basics within a week or two, depending on what you're trying to learn. And then you can start applying to jobs just with that. So I don't think you necessarily need to take a complete master Photoshop course or something like that. But if you know how to make a simple logo or a simple graphic, that's more than enough to get you something like creating social media graphics or ads for somebody, a myriad of different things. And then you can kind of learn as you go from there once you know enough to get started.
So I imagine if you take on a job like design me a logo, once you know what you want, like, oh, I really wish that this was an oval instead of a circle, then you can YouTube it or Google it and work out how to make that happen and kind of learn on the job, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's honestly what I did from the start. And I was nervous about it at first, feeling like, am I a fraud, for doing this, for calling myself a designer? But I quickly learned a lot of times clients, they don't have the time to do it themselves or to figure it out themselves. So as long as you can guarantee that you're going to do a good job, which, if that means you have to put an extra hour to figure out how to make that circle a rectangle or whatever it is you need, then they're happy to pay you for it typically.
I feel like it's also important to remember that even really experienced designers are always learning. And they know how to go from circle to rectangle, but maybe they don't know how to make some 3D moving text. And so when their client asks for that, they're just like, yeah, sure, I'll work it out. So every designer, even someone who you think is really super experienced, is probably still learning stuff on the job as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still do all the time, especially with web design.
Okay, cool. So we've decided what work we're going to do. We're ready to apply for stuff or make a profile. What's step 2?
So step 2 then is actually setting up your profile. So of course, by this point, you already want an account on Upwork, and typically you can get it set up within like 5 or 10 minutes. And then as far as setting up your profile, there's a bunch of different categories that you want to make sure and fill out, even if it's really basic. And Upwork will usually give you some sort of guide as to like how complete your profile is, if it's 10% or 50% or 100%, and you want to make sure it's 100%. So you have to fill out fields for like your title, the overview for your profile, talking about who you are, what you do, your portfolio pieces, some tags like keywords that you can add, to help people find you for the work that you do, and then education. I'm trying to think what the others are off the top of my head. Education. Other experience, I think, availability, location, and languages. So as long as you have all those basics filled out to some extent, then you're going to be 100% complete, which is important because if you do want to use the platform for more than just a couple weeks, then that sets you on your way to getting a rating, which helps you get more jobs in the future, helps you get seen online in the Upwork platform. And then for tags, they, I think, limit it to 10. So you want to make sure those are the most relevant. And then also if you order it, because you can, I think, drag and drop in which order they are, make sure the ones that are most important, like the projects you want to do the most, are first.
Is there a portfolio section or is that in a later stage?
There is a portfolio section. And I think this is a bit tricky for some people that, if you're brand new to it and you're not experienced in whatever skill set you have, this is often a question I get where people are like, oh, like I don't have a portfolio yet. So I would definitely recommend creating a couple example projects, even if they're really simple, just to showcase your skill and your style what you bring to the table, even if it's really simple, just to give people a sense of that.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be a real project for a real client. You can just design a logo that you like or write a copywriting that you think is cool just about some fictional topic. Cool. And how many of those would you suggest people have? Like 3 or 4?
Yeah, 3 or 4 is a really good start. If you're just quickly like trying to get through it, then even 1 or 2 is fine. But typically I suggest at least 4.
Okay, cool. All right, profile's looking good. We're going to have customers pouring in. What is step 3?
Is just finding projects that you think you're a good fit for and then starting to apply. So basically by day 3, or, depending on how fast you work through this, you should be ready to go to start finding projects, which is awesome. So the way you find projects on Upwork is they have a search system of sorts where you can just see, projects that have been posted, and then you can filter them by all sorts of different filters they have available. So they have a lot of different filters, from price range to filtering by just projects that are hourly versus fixed price, projects that you can search actually by search terms. You can narrow it down to very specific search terms. So I definitely encourage people, if you're starting to experiment there, experiment with a lot of different things, because if you narrow down, you might find something that's a really good fit for you, but you also might find more if you make it broad, because sometimes people misspell stuff or they don't categorize it correctly, but they are still serious oftentimes. They just maybe are new to the platform and didn't understand like where it should go. So I use a lot of different filters when I'm trying to find new projects. Often I'll use like searching by specific keywords. Like I do a lot of work with Shopify, so I'll plug in Shopify and then use different filters for the price ranges, hourly versus fixed price. And then experience level. So you can filter by your own experience level. So you can get jobs, within your sort of range of knowledge and expertise. They also have a really cool filter so you can see how many other people have applied. So that kind of gets into the strategy side. If you want to try and get seen, usually people say that you should apply, be within the first 1 to 10 people that apply. So you can filter out all the projects that have more than 10 proposals.
So essentially you just apply for as many as possible and then hope that some of them get back to you. Do you like follow up with people?
Yeah, so you can't reach out unless they reply to you. So that's a really important piece of it, is making sure you write really good proposals and have some sort of call to action. Is probably the number one thing I recommend to people, is having call to actions in your proposals to try and get people to reply in one way or another, whether it's asking questions or, asking like, when's a good time to talk? Because that I found overall gets more responses than just kind of showing your experience.
I've heard of people doing like video applications, and that's really effective. Can you do that in Upwork? Like, could you record a video saying like, hi, I want to apply to your Shopify job, and send it? Or is it only text?
It is only text, but you can include links. So a lot of times what I'll do is for projects that I really, really want, I've sort of limited it to just those, because I find that the video applications can take me longer. And so I just want to do it just for the ones I really want to hear back from. But yeah, I found that when I do video applications, I hear back a lot more. So I just use, I used to use YouTube. I would just upload a video to like as unlisted, but now I use Loom, which is a new sort of software you can install on your computer, and it'll record your whole screen with like a little bubble of you. So that's really useful if I want to show somebody something, like an example of my work that might relate to them, or I can just have it show me. So there's a bunch of different options, and then it just gives you a link to the video when you're done.
Because I've heard from my friends who do freelancing that if you do even just a little selfie video on your camera, like nothing fancy or edited, just being like, hi Steph, I really like the look of your Shopify job. I'd really love to apply. I've got tons of experience, blah, blah. And just unedited, like nothing simple, nothing fancy, then I've heard that sending that makes a really big difference to conversions. I guess especially like you said, if you record your screen and scroll through your portfolio or something, that would probably work really well. Okay, sweet. What are we on now? Step 4?
So yeah, by day 3, I guess, step 3, you pretty much everything you need to know to start applying and putting yourself out there. So by the end of step 3, I typically recommend that people, or throughout the process, I recommend, that you save jobs as you're just kind of browsing and getting a feel for things. And then by the end of step 3, apply to as many as you can. That way you have just kind of a, you start to get in the zone for it, get the feel for it, for applying. And then you kind of just get a bunch out there all at once. And then day 4, tips for landing your first project. Getting your first project on Upwork is really important because it kind of sets the stage for helping you get more projects. So oftentimes people find that getting the first one is the most difficult because you don't have experience on the platform. You may not have a portfolio to really show people. And so people kind of need some more convincing to be willing to hire you. So often what I'll recommend, especially if you're a beginner, is list your profile rate at, whatever you want your rate to be, maybe $10 to $20 an hour, something like that, and then apply to jobs at slightly lower than that. So if your rate's $20 an hour on your profile, then apply at like 10 or 15, and then just be honest in your proposals, telling people that you're new to the platform. I think especially right now, if you're telling people, you're just trying to get extra work or you were laid off from the coronavirus, like you're probably going to hear back from people. And then similarly, if you're already experienced, then I recommend, listing your normal rate on your profile, but applying at 50 to 75% of your regular rate. That way you could just kind of get your foot in the door. Someone feels like they're getting a really good deal and supporting, someone that's just starting out. Another tactic I've seen people use before is getting people outside of Upwork to hire you just to get your first project and review in the bag. So I don't necessarily recommend doing it like super black hat where you just have your friend pay you and you pay them back. But I've seen people go in Facebook groups and stuff where they'll offer a big discount on a specific service. Like instead of doing logo design for $200, you'll do it for $50 or something. And I've seen a lot of people get projects that way. So then you could just run it through Upwork to get those initial reviews.
Cool. Okay. Step 5.
Woo, step 5. So for this one, I talked about project proposal tips. So we talked briefly in step 3 about setting up proposals, but there's a lot of nuances to it and a lot of things that I've learned over the years that help get responses. So here I kind of just outline a few different rough templates because I don't recommend sending out copy and paste sort of generic templates because that's not really engaging enough to get a response usually. So I always recommend customizing it, but there's a few different things that I kind of recommend trying to insert from time to time and switching in and out of your proposals. So a couple different things that you can try talking about are relevant experience. So this is great if you actually have, work experience in the skill set where you can talk about really specific projects that are similar to what you're trying to apply to. Another one would be, always making sure to list links to your examples of your work, or you can upload attachments as well. What tends to matter the most is being able to engage and relate to clients and being able to show your value and communicate that you can get the project done, but not just that specific project, that you can bring value to their business. If you can help show them how creating a really good website will help them get more sales, that it's not just about, oh, you have a beautiful website. It's like doing it this way, in this strategic way, or whatever it is, will help increase your ROI, increase your conversions, all that kind of stuff, then they're much more likely to reach out and be like, wow, this sounds amazing. Like, I definitely want to work with you.
I guess the main thing with clients is to put the dream on the plate for them as much as possible. So rather than being like, check out my profile, be like, attach the images yourself or attach the links yourself. And yeah, like you said, being like, I have this idea that we could actually make your homepage like a different color so that your ROI is better because with a previous client that gave them 100% return or whatever. So yeah, like you said, painting the dream and just really handing it to them.
Yeah, definitely. And especially like little advice and tips and tricks like that right off the bat, they're much more likely to respond because they can tell that you know what you're talking about, you already have ideas, you're engaged. Whereas when, I've hired on Upwork before and I've gotten so many just like copy pasted, like, yes, I can do this job for you. When can I start?
Yeah, they want someone who they're going to enjoy working with. And I guess who cares about their business as much as they do, because it's most likely small businesses on Upwork. So if you really care what their conversion's like, rather than just caring how soon you can get paid, then that will really show.
I mean, that brings up a really good point too. I think having personality is really good too. Not being overly professional or super dry.
Will you know when you're applying what their like website is or what their company is?
It really depends. Some people write really good descriptions of their project and of the job. So then you have a lot to work with to put in your proposal and to apply with. But then some people just put like, I need a Squarespace website. And that's it. And so you have no idea, like, what is it for? Like, how many pages do you need? But I've still gotten jobs even from those really vague proposals or those really vague descriptions.
I guess with the vague ones, they'll be impressed if you ask them questions like, how many pages is it? And what industry are you in? Whereas they're probably getting a lot of applications being like, hi, I can do that, pay me. And then with the specific ones, they're just asking for you to go into detail and be like, oh, I looked at your Instagram and like your dog is ridiculously adorable, or I really need those leggings that you sell, like the purple color is my favorite, or whatever. So I guess either way, you can use that to differentiate. Either you can ask questions because it's vague, or you can give loads of like excited opinions because it's specific. I guess you forget like how generic the replies are that they're getting. In fact, I almost recommend maybe that people make a listing on Upwork just to see the kind of applications that you get and realize how you can differentiate and kind of try and put yourself in a client's position of the kind of responses you normally get and what convinces you and what doesn't. That might be an interesting thing to do.
It's a great idea because I've done that myself, and because I've actually been hiring there for something before.
Yeah, so
I have learned a lot in the process. So yeah, it would definitely be worth doing.
Okay, cool. So we've done our application. It's super amazing. What is step 6?
Step 6, I talk about setting up your first project. So this is actually something that is a little bit different than the rest of it, where I talk about tips for Upwork. And this is more about setting yourself up well when you start working, especially if you're new to freelancing, whether that's whether you have experience or not. Freelancing is really different than working for a company. When you work for a company, they have you covered for a lot of different things. The scope of work that you do, you might report to other people. You have contracts and stuff in place with your company. So if things fall or like take a turn for the worse with a client, it usually doesn't fall on you when you work for a company. But when you're a freelancer, it does fall on you. So what I recommend to people is having a couple different documents in place from the very beginning. The first one would be a scope of work or a project proposal type document. And the second is a contract of some sort. So, I'm not a lawyer and I can't give official advice, especially for the contract. But for the scope of work or project proposal documents, really it's just a document to outline the specific work you're going to be doing. And especially if you can find a nice template online to lay this out well, it just shows people that you're professional and that, it gives them a good idea of what's included and what's not. So you can list, oh, this is how many revisions you get, or this is how many hours are included, that sort of thing. So I often send this to people before I start a project, just so they have an idea. And then if there's little pieces of that they want to add more to, it gives me an opportunity to add that on for extra cost as well.
And that benefits you and the client. It's not like, oh, this client's going to screw me over, so I need to make sure they're really locked down. I feel like when I'm a client, I really like to know how many revisions I'm getting or which things are going to be chargeable and like how many hours I get. And then I also like to know, will you tell me when I'm at half of the hours, or are you going to be like, oh, I used up all the hours and I've barely started? And so I think it benefits both of you to have a really clear layout of what's included. And if you're designing a logo, are you also going to give me the source files, or are you also going to do it in Facebook size and Instagram size or whatever?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially when you're just starting out, it really shows an extra level of professionalism that helps assure the clients that you really know what you're doing.
So do you give templates for that in the email course, or do you recommend that people download them online or build their own? What's the best way to get those?
I recommend that people go online and find their own. It just depends on the type of work that you're doing, but I do have a couple recommendations for resources. So the first one would be Hello Bonsai, and they kind of are Hello Bonsai is sort of like a project management overall system, sort of, for freelancers. So they have a lot of those key pieces like project proposals, estimates, contracts, even hourly tracking and billing tracking. So there's a lot of things there. And then I've heard really good things about a place called The Contract Shop, or a website called The Contract Shop. And they have really good, like completely legal, it's not just some free template. contracts specifically for freelancers. So that's a really good place, I think, to start if you want to just have all your ducks in a row from the get-go.
I guess actually, especially with Corona and lots of businesses going out of business, you kind of want to know, are you doing a deposit? Like what happens if they need to cancel the job halfway through, and make sure it's fair for both parties. You probably want to think even more about those kind of unexpected eventualities right now.
Yeah, definitely. And the other good thing too is these are just extra pieces that you can have in place to help in case you have a dispute, but most of the time you're not. And Upwork does a really good job of handling payments. So I definitely recommend people continue to use Upwork for payments. I mean, you have to use it if you want to get the review and stuff on there. But they have really good systems for tracking hours, really good systems for like an escrow sort of system for fixed price projects. So you always make sure you get paid as long as you set that up right.
Okay, cool. And finally, step 7.
Woo! So step 7, I just used this to have sort of a Q&A section where I answered a bunch of really common questions about Upwork, because basically by the end, since I did it as day by day sort of courses, every single day you have these tasks to achieve, setting up your profile, finding projects, starting to apply. So by the end of the week, basically, you should have been applying to projects. Hopefully have heard back from people. So I used day 7 to talk about common questions that you're probably starting to come across. Okay, so some of the common questions I get about Upwork. One of the first ones I get probably all the time is about Upwork's fees, because a lot of people feel like it's not worth it as a freelancer. So I think it's 100% worth it when you view it the right way, because without Upwork, you have to do all of your own marketing, all of it. You have to do outreach or build your brand on social media or paid advertising, whatever it is you want to do, that's all on you. And so some of my friends and people that I know that have, been working online for a while haven't used Upwork, and it's taken them months and months and months to get to the point where they get even semi-consistent leads for the type of work they want to be doing and for their business, because it just takes so much longer. So it's really not a reliable way to start when you need money now. It makes sense if you're trying to build a business, but if you're just trying to dip your toes in the water of freelancing and online business, then you may not have the time for that. You basically have this almost free access to warm to hot leads. A lot of people hire within a few days on Upwork.
Yeah.
So it's really, that's crazy when you're thinking about coming at it as just a regular business that has to do all their own marketing. Like, it's really rare that you would get access to that many leads, especially warm to hot leads. So it's really, really an investment. And then also the fees are not as much as everybody thinks. So most people say, oh, it's 20%, like it's so much, but it's actually not 20%. So it's 20% up to a project of $500. And then $500 to $10,000, it's 10%. And then over $10,000 with a client, it's 5%. So it kind of incentivizes people to take on projects that are longer, which, you can't always control that, but you can get to the point where you're doing $1,000 projects, or, just consistently working with the same client, because it's based on the client, not on the project. So, once you, say you do social media graphics or something for somebody for $500, and then they need more, that extra, that second project at $500 or whatever it is, you're not going to pay 20%, you're going to pay 10.
Does that mean you have to make that like within the same project? You have to not mark the project as complete, or does Upwork know anyway that it's the same client?
Yeah, so Upwork knows it's the same client. So you can mark the project as complete and get the review. And then as long as you just work with them through their same account, then it just goes under the same client.
Okay, cool. What other FAQs do you have?
Yeah, so the next one that I get a lot is, how do you get top rated? So this is something that comes into play if you're wanting to freelance more long term or use the platform more consistently. So top rated is a sort of status that you can earn over time, which helps you show up more in search and get recommended more to clients. I also get I'm top rated. I get a lot of invitations as well, which I think has to do with the fact that I'm top rated. Overall, you get a score on Upwork the longer you're working on there. So you have to wait 13 to 16 weeks to be eligible. And The eligibility, there's a few different factors that go in, but a lot of it has to do with number of reviews that you've gotten. Do you close down projects once you've finished them, or are they just kind of open-ended forever? Are you consistently working with people? Are you applying to projects? Do you respond to inquiries quickly? That all feeds into giving you a score. And then once your score is over 90% for 13 to 16 weeks, then you can be eligible for top rated. So it can take some time, but you definitely get more perks and have access, I think, to a lot more good projects when you're top rated.
And that's not too long, like 3 or 4 months, and you can get that status. If someone, this may go on for that long, but
Right.
Also if you want to, now maybe is your chance to get started. And then if you want to continue it long term, then it's not that far away that you could get that tag. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I'm not 100% sure on this, but there is a secondary sort of tag or status that you get, which is called rising talent. And the part I'm not sure on is how you get that. I believe it's the same sort of stuff that they use to factor in your score. But you can get rising talent as well before you become top rated. So having that also helps show people that you're new to the platform, but you're coming up.
Okay, cool. Let's do one more FAQ.
This is also probably ones I get the most. Isn't Upwork a race to the bottom? Can you actually find high-paying gigs there? Can you actually find good clients there? So this is one of the most common, I think, things that people think, misconceptions that people have about Upwork, is that it's not really a good platform to find work. I hear this a lot from people that are maybe a little bit more experienced, have kind of been doing online business for a little bit longer, or they have their own website and stuff already. And so they don't really see the reason to use Upwork. But I've really found the opposite. It hasn't been until like the past couple years that I started branching out of Upwork and, having my own website and getting gigs outside of Upwork. So before that, and even now, to be honest, I work with a lot of clients still through Upwork, and there's a lot of serious people on there. There's a lot of people willing to hire professionals. And especially if you're a native English speaker from a Western country, there's definitely people specifically looking for those kinds of people for writing, for social media content, graphic design, anything like that. I find a lot of people that would prefer to pay more, even double or triple, to work with a Westerner that understands their culture and the communication a lot better. There's a couple different things you can do to try and find those clients. The first is pricing yourself out of those lower brackets, because that's honestly where a lot of the problem is that people look at these projects where, someone's trying to hire someone for $10 an hour, $5 an hour, but that's not really the client that you want in the end. Someone that's just trying to get the cheapest price possible. So if you're looking more in the like $20 to $30 an hour range, especially, the supplies, especially if you have a little bit of experience with what you're doing, or as you scale up from, just starting out at 10 to 20, but you can definitely find people that are more serious, kind of within that range, and upwards from there, definitely.
And it seems like it's nice to have a spectrum of options. So if it's your first ever like graphic design gig, and like we were saying, you've got laid off from your like waitressing job and you want to get into graphic design, then if you apply to like a $5 or $10 an hour job and everybody else is not native English, then you're probably going to get that job immediately. They'll be like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing candidate, even though you don't have a ton of experience. And then over time, when you grow, you can apply to the more high-end jobs, and you can also get those as well because then you've got experience. So it seems like it has a lot of room to grow on the platform with you.
That's a really good point. I mean, especially at the beginning, the priority should be just getting those first couple jobs so that you can sort of build your reputation on the platform. So if you're being strategic like that, you can definitely get those jobs and, provide really good work and really good value for your clients, and then just slowly scale up. That's honestly exactly what I did when I started. I started at like $15 an hour and now charge $100 an hour.
Amazing. Yeah. That was super helpful. Thank you so much. Okay, so the email course is free. People just sign up in the link, which I'll put in the description, and then they get 7 days of emails, which walks them through these 7 steps so that by the end of the week, hopefully you've got your first paying client in the bag.
Yes. And another thing I want to mention is that I did create a Facebook group as well. That I'm going to leave it open, so it's welcome to anyone that's interested in freelancing. But I created it specifically to sort of go with this. If people have more questions, they can ask in the group, and then other people can see as well. So I'll answer any questions you guys have, and you can also reach out to me directly.
Okay, perfect. I look forward to chatting again in future. We need to hang out some more.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Steph. I really appreciate it. Look after yourself, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Thank you.